Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Rich Politics. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and all of you on Facebook as well, like and share the page and the broadcast, because my guest today is a very good friend. In fact, he's been on this show more than any other guest. I don't know why. It must be something to do with Brexit. Yes, the big B word, given the vaccinations are being rolled out here in Wales very slowly, across the UK as well, very rapidly. But there are other issues still to play for. Many of us who fought for Brexit and were satisfied that Boris got Brexit done, were we really satisfied? Did he get Brexit done really? Well, my guest today doesn't seem to think so. Guess what's back on the subject again? Yes, we're talking about the EU and us leaving the EU, the customs union and the single market. But there's something not right, because this week, all my timeline on social media was just Ben Habib. And I thought, what's Ben going on about? Of course, it is the chairman of Unlocked Ben Habib ranting about the Prime Minister, Michael Gove, believing that they've deceived the nation and that we hadn't taken back sovereignty. Can you believe that? So, is this true? Well, we're going to find out, because my guest joining me right now is the chairman of Unlocked, Ben Habib. Welcome to Rich Politics.
Hi, Richard.
Thank you so much for coming back on. Well, Ben, you've had a great week of rants, haven't you, this week?
Well, I don't mean to rant. It probably does sound like one long rant since October 2019. But, you know, I really want to move on from Brexit, actually, Rich. I want to move on from it. It's been one hell of a journey, for not just for me, for the nation. And I think it's time for the nation to look forward. But I think to look forward with confidence and with a proper plan, we really need to understand where we are. We need to first understand where we are, what the foundations of our going forward is. And once we understand the foundations, then we can look forward with optimism, make a plan, have a vision, execute it. And I think one of the problems this government's got is that it's rather like an alcoholic who won't face up to the fact that they're alcoholic. And until they do, they can't get treatment. That's the point I'm trying to make. But I don't want to rant. I don't want to back on about I think there are some important things.
Well, I think rant's probably too strong. I like to rant a lot, as my viewers know. I rant about everything and anything, right, as a Welshman. But certainly, Ben, you've got justifiable cause, because I've been listening to what you've been putting forward, and the idea that the deal that both Gove and Boris Johnson have apparently successfully done for the UK doesn't take back full control. Can you explain what you meant by that? But it doesn't give us full sovereignty, because there's some clauses and issues in the agreement, isn't there?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, getting sovereignty, doing Brexit properly is quite simple. The Prime Minister defined it himself. You know, it's the entire United Kingdom leaving the EU as one United Kingdom. It's taking back control of our laws, our borders, our cash, and our fish. That's what it says on page 5 of the Conservative Party manifesto. He couldn't have said it more succinctly than that. But none of the deals that he's now signed 2 deals, none of the provisions of those deals actually delivers the promises on page 5, which I think, as I just said, very sensibly define what Brexit is.
Yeah, I mean, I've read the article as well in the Express, and you were obviously talking a lot about how they'd deceived, in your opinion, the people of the United Kingdom by their actions, because we haven't taken back full control, have we? Because there's some issues over Northern Ireland, in particular the Northern Ireland Protocol. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the issues are manifold. The Northern Irish Protocol, I think, is the worst issue from a constitutional and sovereign perspective, because it gives the European Court of Justice direct, supreme judicial authority over Northern Ireland in many issues. It signs Northern Ireland up to EU state aid laws, excise laws, VAT laws. It commits the Northern Irish province to being in the EU customs union. It volunteers up a border down the Irish Sea, and contrary to all the representations made by Boris Johnson that wouldn't be a border with any difficulty for trade, actually we've seen in the first few weeks of January that trade is finding it really difficult. And this is actually at a time, Richard, when there are certain grace periods in effect where there's been a derogation from the strict terms of the protocol, and the EU, in their infinite kindness and generosity, has allowed great British producers of sausages, for example, the example that Michael Gove goes on about,
Yeah.
it has allowed great British, producers of sausages in Great Britain to export them. That's the word they use, to Northern Ireland, without any phytosanitary checks at the moment. But that ends on 31st March. So actually, you've got this border down the Irish Sea. You've got EU laws applying in Northern Ireland. You've got the European Court of Justice having supreme authority over those laws in Northern Ireland. And so you can't begin to claim that the United Kingdom has left the EU whole as one United Kingdom. But it's actually worse than that, Rich. And that's what I discovered this week when I was ranting. And the reason I was ranting...
Well, Ben, interrupt there, because you can go on that, because actually I think Unlocked played a clip of Michael Gove's words in Westminster when he was at the dispatch box, and he told us what it would be like. Now, a day before that, Aline Foster was speaking to Michael Gove and asking that there would be no problems with the Northern Ireland Protocol. There'd be no, issues at all. But let's play the clip and let our viewers make their own mind up. Here's Aline Foster, and then we'll watch Michael Gove, and then we'll get back to Ben Habib.
Spoke with Michael Gove earlier on today. He gave me a heads up that this had been the case. Of course, we await to see the detail. For us, the important issue on all of these matters is that we have unfettered access from Northern Ireland into Great Britain, but also that trade from Great Britain into Northern Ireland can trade freely as well. So we await to see what has happened in relation to those matters. Well, I understand that Michael Gove will make a statement to Parliament tomorrow. Very much hope that the detail will become very clear then, because you're absolutely right. We were written to by a number of people. 32 business organisations wrote to us yesterday to say that we did need clarity, and more than that, we needed a free trade agreement. So they were going wider than the protocol, and we again hope that there will be a breakthrough in relation to the main negotiation.
The concern that many colleagues had was that a company in Great Britain with only a peripheral link to commercial operations in Northern Ireland could be caught inadvertently by the tests within the protocol's text. That would not have been acceptable, nor was it what the protocol had envisaged. That's why I'm pleased that the agreement we have addresses that risk. It means that firms in Great Britain stay outside state aid rules where there is no genuine and direct link to Northern Ireland and no real foreseeable impact on Northern Ireland EU.
Now, Ben, is Michael Gove lying to the British public?
Well, he is absolutely twisting the position. And, it's really interesting. That clip that you played of Michael Gove was 9th of December. So that preceded the release of the new trade and cooperation agreement, which came out on Christmas Eve. And it wasn't until the 18th of January this month that any kind of real written document was available on what the Joint Committee of the EU and UK had decided on Northern Ireland. But when I read that document, it made it absolutely clear that businesses in Great Britain that traded with Northern Ireland or had subsidiaries in Northern Ireland would be caught under EU state aid law, even if the benefit that they got from the British government was direct or indirect. So in other words, just with peripheral assistance and peripheral trade with Northern Ireland, even the smallest amount of trade. So for example, I run a property company. If I now go to Northern Ireland and buy a property, I will be, as a company, subject to EU state aid laws. My company will become subject to EU state aid laws. And if the government, in its wisdom, should offer the property industry some sort of state aid, they never will, of course, by the way, not to rapacious landlords as they see us. But if they were to, my company wouldn't be able to take it because we would be caught by the fact that I'd invested in Northern Ireland. So we have a situation where British firms are going to be reluctant to invest in Northern Ireland because they're going to find themselves at the mercy of the European Court of Justice and not British laws.
But if I can put to you, this is not a permanent agreement, though, is it? It's negotiable. I think they've mentioned 4 years. It can be discussed. Stormont has an option. The people of Northern Ireland can decide. It's not fixed in cement, or is it?
Well, it can be revoked in 4 years' time, as you say, if Stormont votes against it. But they're not going to vote against it because Stormont is effectively in deadlock. It won't be able to find a way out of this out of this protocol. And remember, even if they were to vote against it, then there's another 2-year period after that, during which Northern Ireland will remain in the EU customs union. And if the EU and the UK can't agree on what the settlement for Northern Ireland should be after that 6-year period, then it comes back to the European Court of Justice to decide what the future of Northern Ireland is. So if you follow the steps through, actually, there's no easy way out of Northern Ireland for this. And contrary to all the remonstrations made by Ireland, the United States of America, and the EU, this agreement on Northern Ireland isn't compliant with the GFA. It's putting a border down the Irish Sea doesn't enable us to comply with the GFA. That's a Good Friday Agreement, by the way.
Yeah.
It breaches the Good Friday Agreement because in doing so, we've made a constitutional change to the setup in Northern Ireland without a plebiscite. And the Good Friday Agreement, or the Belfast Agreement, is pretty clear. It says there has to be a plebiscite for there to be a change in the constitutional setup of Northern Ireland. And we've done it together with the EU.
Yeah.
Bilaterally, making a decision on the people on the people of Northern Ireland's behalf, and giving them a vote in their broken assembly in 4 years' time. And their assembly is broken. I don't mean to put these down, but for years it was inactive. It only got back in action a year ago. So it's a terrible position that the people of Northern Ireland have been put in. But, that clip of Michael Gove. The reason I was going on about it is it's not just Northern Ireland that are now caught. Actually, the entire United Kingdom is caught if it has any dealings with Northern Ireland. There is creepback of EU state aid laws and EU judicial hegemony back into Great Britain. In other words, all of the United Kingdom is caught.
So I should imagine what we're saying is the EU still got its fingers in our pies. Basically, that's what you're saying in layman's terms, Ben, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I'm afraid it's even worse than that, Rich, without wishing to go on about it. But one of the things that the Prime Minister signed up to in the new trade and cooperation agreement was a level playing field. It wasn't subject to EU law, that level playing field, which was a relief. But it basically committed the entire United Kingdom not to regress from EU state aid law. So we can set our own laws, as long as those laws aren't different to those of the EU. It's kind of, we're playing with semantics here. So we have absolutely tied the United Kingdom into the lunar pool of the EU. That's what the Prime Minister has done. He knows he's done it.
But Ben, a lot of Brexiteers, friends of mine, yours, I know, and many others as well, across parties as well, they would, think, well, listen, we got the best we could out of the deal. Let's be honest. We're out. Finally, we've left, which we all agree with. The battle's over. Surely these are just semantics now. They're not real important issues. But you're arguing the fact that they are, because they have huge implications, because it means that there is still EU interference within our judicial system, business, trade, and everything because of the Northern Ireland Protocol. Is that right?
Because of the Northern Ireland Protocol, because of the level playing field, and we haven't talked about it, but also because of the fishing obligations we've taken on. And there are a number of other undertakings we've given the European Union, which will prevent us from being able to be, independent entirely of the EU.
Yeah.
And this isn't just about some kind of notional desire to be sovereign. What people really need to take on board is that the EU is not a benign entity towards the UK. It has repeatedly said, and we've seen it in its actions, that the UK needs to be seen to fail because they're the difficult ones that voted for Brexit. They're the ones who threatened the European Union's existence. They need us to fail so that other member states in the EU don't take a lead from the United Kingdom. And their malign intent towards us was hugely exemplified this week.
Yeah.
When they were trying to prevent vaccines coming across from the European Union to the UK, vaccines to which we were entitled, coming from AstraZeneca, because AstraZeneca had said it may not be able to meet the indications it had given the EU of supply of vaccines to the EU. The EU is not a benign entity. It's not even it's not even a competitive entity like you might expect any country to wish to compete with the UK on trade terms. It's not even a competitive entity. It is a malignant entity. It has a malign intent as far as the UK is concerned.
Yeah.
And people watching this video will think, oh, he's a slightly aggressive, belligerent Brexiteer. I'm not. We've seen it in their actions. They tried to undermine Brexit. They tried to undermine democracy in this country. They do it repeatedly in the European Union. And with the terms of this agreement, I mean, how is it that the EU could demand that the United Kingdom partition itself simply because it wants to give effect to the results of the 2016 referendum to leave the EU?
It appears that they just want the UK to fail, lock, stock and barrel, so they can turn and say, look, you made a mistake, you shouldn't have left us. But I think what we're seeing as well, Ben, the other side, there are other member states waking up to the reality of these bully boys in Brussels, because there's a lot of talk now about some of the member states feeling the same way that we were back in 2016. Maybe there's time for a change. And this has been seen with the vaccination, where I think it was Hungary reported today, this week, that they're begging for the vaccinations to be given to them. And yet the EU are not playing ball, withholding, and it's a carbon copy of what they've persistently done, isn't it? Really, throughout even the negotiations over Brexit, they can't let go. What is the obsession with the EU over the UK?
Well, this project has now taken a life of its own. It's the EU is an entity, and we've seen that debate unfold in the last few weeks, when British authorities refused to grant ambassadorial recognition of the EU's representative in London, saying that we recognise him and we'll give him all the access he needs to fulfil his job as representative of the EU, but we won't recognise him as an ambassador. And that sent them off a cliff edge in apoplectic anger, because they want to be seen as a nation state. Von der Leyen 2 weeks ago was talking about the importance and value of pooled sovereignty across the EU. They are taking authority away from the states, concentrating it in themselves. And this is the process that's been going on for 40 years and will continue to go on. But the vaccines is a really interesting example, because you've seen a nimble United Kingdom, a relatively nimble United Kingdom, invent one of the vaccines, get it to market faster than anyone else, having vaccinated now, I think, about 10% of the population. And the EU is still searching for its vaccines. It doesn't know where they are. And that is the of this bureaucratic rubbish. They tried 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, they were lecturing us how the vaccination program shouldn't be seen as a jealous national activity, that we ought to be looking at this globally. And here they are a month and a half later, trying to block vaccines coming into the UK. I mean, you couldn't make
Of course, the Remainers, I mean, I had some conversation with someone on social media this week. They're going mental over the whole thing. And it's like, well, and Leavers as well. Of course, if we were still in the EU, then we would be behind. And currently, whether we think about the government's failures, when it comes to this role of vaccination, Boris hasn't done a bad job, let's be honest. We know it's not him. We know it's all the frontline workers, the NHS, etc. Not so much in Wales. We're very slow in Wales. That's another story for another time, under a devolved administration. But I noted as well that obviously the DUP are not entirely happy. Aline Foster and a few others have talked about this, haven't they? In the Belfast letter this week as well, they mentioned that they feel shackled by the whole Brexit thing that's happened. And we discussed actually, Ben, on this show back in October. And so this is to let our viewers know how consistent you have been, because we talked about then whether there'll be a deal or no deal. And one of your concerns in that show that we did, and I listened back to it earlier today, was that you expressed that the whole issue over state aid and the effects that would have if the EU still have levels of control within those negotiations and dealings. And that's where we are right now, aren't we?
That is where we are. We are basically signed up to EU state aid law. The only way we can get out of it is either we breach the withdrawal agreement and we break international law, which, I mean, it might be worth just dwelling on this for a second, Rich.
Yeah.
On September 12th, the Prime Minister wrote in the Telegraph that the internal market bill, which is a bill he was bringing to Parliament at the time, was a vital bit of legislation because it neutered the ability for the European Union to exercise EU state aid laws in Northern Ireland, and it neutered their ability, therefore, to have any control over the United Kingdom from that perspective. And it also neutered, to a very significant extent, this Irish sea border. And he explained in his article on the 12th of September in the Telegraph that when he had negotiated the Northern Irish Protocol, he had one arm tied behind his back. And that's why he was now coming to the point, and Brandon Lewis confirmed it in the Commons, to breaking international law to put that right. And he described it, just to remind you what I've just said, as vital legislation. And somewhere between the 12th of September and the 9th of December, when Michael Gove made that statement, the Prime Minister changed his mind and dropped the whole issue. And the impression that we were given was that actually the Joint Committee of the EU and the UK had separately negotiated a settlement which obviated the need for the internal market bill. But then and that's the impression Michael Gove gave on the 9th of December. Yeah. And then I got this paper, as I mentioned in my rant earlier this week, on draft produced on the 18th of January by the European Commission, which states absolutely black and white that the EU expects any tangential form of aid to any British company which trades with Northern Ireland or has operations in Northern Ireland, in other words, direct or indirect links with Northern Ireland, will be caught by EU state aid law. So the Joint Committee never reached that decision.
So when was this document published, Ben, from the EU Commission?
18th of January.
18th of January, right, okay. So obviously they knew what was going on behind the scenes, but we didn't. So there was some dealings going on, weren't there?
Absolutely. And that's why I say that Michael Gove misled the nation. Because he got up on the 9th of December, knowing full well that the EU were not in agreement with him, and purported that the Joint Committee had reached a decision which would negate the ability for British firms, firms based in Great Britain, from being caught inadvertently by EU state aid laws. But that's not the case. My little company, all it needs to do is go and buy a shop in Northern Ireland, and I'll be caught by EU state aid law. Or if someone sells sausages in Northern Ireland, assuming they can get across the Irish Sea to do so, they'll get caught by EU state aid law. You know, or if someone manufactures bits of sausage that go into the sausages made by another company and then into Northern Ireland, they'll also get caught by it. Any trade with Northern Ireland that the EU decides may unbalance that, may give Northern Ireland a competitive advantage over the rest of the EU member states, will be caught. And it'll be the ECJ that determines whether or not that's the case. So that's not sovereignty.
No, it's not sovereignty in the sense of the whole of the United Kingdom. Let's be honest, because we've passioned off to Northern Ireland and they've had a bad end of the deal. Ben, I wonder what is it then that our Prime Minister needs to do in the light of all this? What is it that the government is able to do, first of all, and what do they need to do if they're able to do that?
Well, the government can do whatever it wants. Actually, it may be regarded by the EU as a pariah. But what the government needs to do is to recognise that the only contract of importance is the one that it has with the British people, that the contract entered into with the European Union on the 23rd, when it was approved by Parliament on the 23rd of January 2020, the withdrawal agreement should be repudiated. That would breach international law, but the Prime Minister must recognise that it's a pernicious agreement.
It's vital, yeah.
Partitions the United Kingdom, and he should repudiate that agreement. And he should get the United Kingdom ready to stand on its own 2 feet without any trade deal with the European Union. And he should terminate this new trade and cooperation agreement so we have no level playing field obligations, so that our fishing waters come back properly to the United Kingdom, and we stop paying money into their European Defence Fund, which again we haven't talked about, but that's another undertaking he's taken on. And we cease all commitments we've made. I'm going to digress for a second, Rick.
Go ahead.
The EU required us to sign up to all sorts of obligations on the environment, on employment, competition law, and everything else. Us, the United Kingdom, a country that has led and championed human rights, we've had to sign up to all these onerous obligations to get a trade deal with the EU. It then went off to China, which has a proven track record of human rights abuses, environmental abuses, and everything else, and signed an investment agreement without any real onerous obligations on China to do anything. So if you need evidence about the duplicity and the malign intent the EU has towards the United Kingdom, that's it. And the Prime Minister needs to wake up to this. He needs to realize that when he says our friends and partners in the EU, he's wrong. There are no friends and partners of ours in the EU. We may have friends in Germany, France, Italy, Greece, and other member states, but we don't have them in Brussels.
Yeah, it's clear, isn't it, that this rhetoric of our friends and neighbours, they keep playing that card. But the truth is, you've seen the behaviour from the EU and those in power. It's completely different from the rhetoric that our politicians seem to be talking about, because they're not friends. They're neighbours, but they're certainly not friends. The way that they've treated the UK is with contempt, and they continue to do so. Now, Ben, I got you on, because it's the first time we're going to talk to you about this, because I know you've been exceptionally busy with Unlocked and many other things in your business as well. Now, due memory, obviously the champion, the queen of our fish coastal communities, has been saying a lot about this, and we mentioned it because it's part of what we're talking about today on the Northern Ireland Protocol, and much more that the EU is trying to influence still the UK. Now, 186 coastal communities have been let down, haven't they, by this deal, haven't they?
They have. So the promise the Prime Minister made, just to remind everyone, the promise the Prime Minister made was that he would take back full control of fishing, and that would mean that the EU would be allocated annual quotas decided by the United Kingdom at its sole discretion. He actually said that in the House of Commons on the 19th of December 2019. You can find the clip if you've got a moment. Unequivocally said that. And the deal we've now got is a deal where we get back incrementally 25% of what the EU has currently got over a period of 5.5 years. And he's described that as a transition rearrangement. And that at the end of 2026, we will have total control of our fishing waters. Well, first of all, those of us who've analysed the numbers can't get to 25%. We don't know where he's getting his numbers from. Second of all, he's let their ships come right down to our 6 mile water.
These are the super trawlers now, the big ones, and pulse fishing and stuff in it.
Which is right down to the, I mean, you know, they'll be fishing, you'll be able to see them fishing off our coast. Normally, you'd hold them out at 200 miles or maybe down to the 12-mile limit, but 6 miles is really close inshore. But the most important thing is that in 2026, we will not be able to terminate those quota shares without suffering significant sanctions or them terminating the trade agreement. If we seek to terminate the fixed quotas that the EU has in 2026, they will have the right, the EU will have the right to terminate the trading aspects, the aviation aspects, and the haulage aspects of the new trade and cooperation agreement.
So what you're saying is they will use the argument that we will, if you change that agreement at 5.5 years, we will impose tariffs and cost on trade. That's what they're saying, Ben. Is that right?
That's exactly what they're saying. That's exactly what they're saying. And so the chances of our government having the courage of terminating it and facing a trade war effectively with the EU is remote, unless, and of course it's within our ability to do it, the government recognizes, this is why I come back to, it's a bit like an alcoholic needs to realize where they are. The government needs to realize the malign intent of the EU. It needs to get ready to stand on, for the United Kingdom to get ready to stand on its own 2 feet. And it's very easily done. So we need to get our exporters ready for a trade war. We need to make sure that they've got grants and cheap government loans and extra government help. And we need to be championing other sources of supplies for our exporters, you know, for the supplies coming into the UK, which go into making goods in our export sector. We need to find new sources of supply for them. We need to actively work with them. We need to actively work with the fishing community to get our boats built, to get our industrial processes right, to get everything else that goes around the fishing industry ready. And then when the United Kingdom is absolutely ready, and this is the saving grace of the new trade and cooperation agreement, the Prime Minister should terminate it. We have the right to do it. This is the saving grace. Under clause 8 on page 405, we can terminate the trade and cooperation agreement with 12 months notice. And the government's primary obligation now, because It's not just about the EU, it's about getting the United Kingdom fighting fit as an independent trading nation. The government's primary duty should be to get the nation ready to exercise that termination provision.
Yeah, well, folks, you've heard it here from who I like to call the expert on Brexit, my good friend Ben Habib. Always got plenty to say and very interesting as well. And for many of you might not understand some of the things that Ben's talked about, and hopefully you do now, because clearly we have not taken back full sovereignty. There are clearly issues that the government has the power to terminate, as Ben has already said to you. Before we go, Ben, I just want to say to all of our followers, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and subscribe to the channel, because our time is nearly up. I know it always goes quick, Ben. We love having you on. Ben, if there's one thing, I always ask you this actually, if there's one thing you could say to Boris Johnson's face, and I know you would as well given the opportunity, because what you'd say behind his back, you'd say to his face, I know you. What would Ben Habib say to Boris Johnson?
I'd say, Boris, look, I understand you picked up a poison chalice that Theresa May handed you when you became Prime Minister. It was one hell of a pickle, unpicking all the problems she'd created. But the clock was always ticking against you. First you had the 31st October deadline, then the 31st Jan deadline, then the 31st December 2020 deadline. Well, all those deadlines have now gone. You are Prime Minister with an 80-seat majority. You can do what you like. And what you need to do is remember the promises you made to the British people. You need to remember what's in the best interest of the British people, because fulfilling those promises, as it happens, is in the best interest of the British people. And then you need to take the EU to task. You need to have the vision for a post-Brexit optimistic United Kingdom. Take the EU to task and terminate the arrangements with them.
Well, there you are, folks. Ben for 10, I say. I'm going to hashtag that Ben for 10 and get you into number 10, Ben, because I think you make a great Prime Minister. Well, that's from this Welshman. You got my vote and support, Ben, certainly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in across all the media platforms. And Ben will be on again, no doubt, in the near future. Ben, thank you ever so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you and speaking to you again here on Rich Politics.
Thank you.